Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Drew Barton, the Bay Area Bomber, Cam Reel, and Doc Llewellyn. We all haven't been together for quite some time, and we haven't talked about the NBA for quite some time. And today, we're also going to talk about the upcoming World Cup, which starts on the 25th, just a few days away. So, gentlemen, first of all, I want to ask Doc. Doc, how's your job with the Browns going?
Everything's going smooth as well.
Good, good. How are the Browns looking? I peeked in on the Eagles game just a little bit. But how are the Browns looking?
I think this is the most talent they had since I've been born. So I think they should be able to hopefully make the playoffs. The AFC is tough, and their division is tough. But this is the most talented team they had. You know, it's going to come down to executing with the quarterback. And let's just see what happens. The defenses should be real solid, but he just got to be able to score a lot of points in the AFC.
Right. Well, agreed. And Drew, you've been you got a promotion at Medlow, which is turning Division II soon. You want to just quickly go over what your new title is?
Yeah, so last I was on the show, I was the SID Sports Information Director for men's and women's basketball, and then helping out with a couple other sports as like a secondary contact. I am now, after this summer of basically being a nuisance and forcing the coach to like me and just being around all the time, I'm going to be maintaining the SID title for both the men's and women's teams, but also taking on the Director of Operations role with our men's team. So going to start off mostly working with our film, getting kind of our film database and stuff for practices and games figured out, get that a little bit tighter, and then going to be taking on a lot of recruiting responsibility in terms of building out our databases, getting coaches, kind of being that original buffer on guys. So, helping coaches identify prospects as quick as possible. And we'll go from there.
Right. Sounds exciting. I mean, being an SID is cool, but your job is kind of more in line with what we do here in terms of analyzing and.
Absolutely.
Right. It's kind of more like the general manager.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to start calling myself the Menlo GM. Let's see how long before I told that, maybe I'll put that on my LinkedIn until my boss tells me to take it down.
And Cam, do you have any news to report? Have you gotten married or anything like that?
No. Easy, Rich. Not yet. Takes time. No, yeah, as you guys know, I'm an 8th grade teacher, so our first day of school was Thursday.
Oh my.
I'm about to get busy for the next couple weeks, but then I'll get back into my routine. We'll be good to go.
Cool. All right. So it's been a while since we did our last NBA notebook, so we have quite a few topics to cover in today's episode. We'll start with some injury news and roster updates before moving on to the 2023 FIBA World Cup. All right. So first item of business is Montrezl Harrell, the Sixers power forward center has torn his ACL as well as his meniscus and will likely miss the entire season. However, Keith Pompey, who we interviewed just a few weeks ago, reports that the team has no intention of parting ways with Harrell this season. Personally, I'd be surprised if they actually kept Harrell past the trade deadline. I think what they're doing is basically they could throw him into some kind of trade to move to match salaries, and there's no sense making a move right away. I think that's more. I don't think they're in love with Harrell or indebted to Harrell. Anybody else have a different opinion?
Yeah, I think at this point, that's kind of what Harrell's become. I know that from a stats production standpoint, he's always looked good. He's always been a stat sheet kind of super sixth man in terms of points, rebounds, and energy. But when
except for last year,
yeah. But as that started to decline, the deficiency, he's not a great defender, he's undersized, he doesn't make out of the post, doesn't stretch the floor, all that starts to be amplified. And you look at this team and yeah, it sucks to lose a guy that has a 6 man of the year on his resume and what you think he can be. But from a size standpoint alone, you still got Embiid, Paul Reed's back. They signed Mo Bamba, I believe I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I mean, PJ Tucker is that kind of undersized four, is still there. They signed one of my Zags made the roster, Petrusev, I believe,
right,
if I'm not mistaken. So on paper, like the name Montrezl Harrell sounds like a big one, like, oh, they lost Montrezl Harrell. But at this point, I think it's more just fluff than anything. I think Rich is right on this one. This is a hold and see, and maybe as we close in on the deadline or make an addition later in the year, we have a salary matcher.
I mean, the biggest hole in the Sixers roster is they don't have a power forward that could shoot.
Yeah.
And every power forward on the team, anybody you would use at the 4 spot cannot shoot. And so the only reason I think they actually signed him was because I think it gave them flexibility to be able to trade him immediately. So if they were going to do some kind of Harden deal, they could have thrown him in. At least that's the way Keith Pompey explained it to us. All right, I'm going to move on to Vlatko Kinkar, a backup forward for the Denver Nuggets, suffered a torn ACL while playing for the Slovenian national team in training camp. Also, probably a season ender. And this is interesting, though. With Jeff Green gone, it opens up minutes for somebody. And is that Peyton Watson? Is that rookie Hunter Tyson? Is that Zeke Naji? Or maybe even Julian Strawther? My guess is it's probably, Watson and Tyson. And, maybe it's not just one guy. But Tyson's certainly, better on the offensive end. Watson's better on the defensive end. They're both around the same size. But yeah, I think actually in the long run, this is good to get one of those youngsters some run. What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, Rich, having seen, a ton of Nuggets film, either live or just, enjoying the team, Chanchar is he's probably one of the more underrated forwards in the league. Really like a sneaky high level athlete. Not a guy that you would kind of expect to be, the type of guy that can dunk from the free throw line, but that's the type of athleticism he has. Really solid shooter. Huge loss for the Nuggets for this coming season. A guy that, who has been with the team for a while. Mm-hmm. But I mean, even a bigger loss, I think, for the Slovenian national team, which we'll get into coming up, but not a team that has a lot of front court depth and not a lot of NBA talent beyond Luka Doncic. You got to think this really hurts their odds of, making the podium in the FIBA World Cup coming up.
Yeah. All right. So moving on, Giannis will not suit up for Greece for the upcoming World Cup because he's still recovering from minor knee surgery. They have called it a quote unquote clean up procedure. Likewise for Nikola Jokic, who is actually healthy, but simply wants to ride horses this summer instead. Now, I don't really, I know it's been a long run for the Nuggets, but, I guess maybe he's planning on saving himself for the Olympics. Any thoughts, because, Serbia actually, would have had the gold medal, they would be in the running with him on the team.
Yeah, it's a shame for both the Greek team and the Serbian team. Serbia is also going to be missing out on Vasily Micic,
right,
or Micic, who just signed with OKC. Right. So Serbia's down a couple of really, obviously really great players. Greece, their title odds took a big slip. And then, of course, this is probably coming up in our announcements, but Jamal Murray has also stepped away from the Canadian team.
Right.
And so, those are three pretty big names that are not going to be competing in this World Cup. This really had the opportunity to become the best FIBA World Cup in recent memory.
Yeah.
With just the spread of NBA talent. But with these three guys missing, there's a lot of competition that will not be had at the World Cup this year.
Yeah.
Wait, what about Ben Simmons missing from Australia?
I didn't put him on the list, but he will not.
Hasn't he been MIA for 15 years at this point, or whatever it is?
Actually, Ben is about to. I think he's been cleared for on-court activity. But I saw an interesting quote from one of the Australian coaches who basically said, I don't know the exact quote, but it was basically, we're not going to beg Ben Simmons to play on the team. We don't really, if he wants to play, that's great. If he doesn't, we're fine without him.
Yeah, and this has always been a thing with Ben Simmons. I don't think he's competed for Australia since U16 ball.
No.
I was going to say U18, but I think you're right, Cam. I think it was before he even was just I think it's goddamn.
Well, I know our own Hugh Baxter, who's an Australian native. It's really a sore spot with him. So he can't be the only Australian. And the coach's comments, I'm not going to beg Ben Simmons to be on the team. I mean, that's just right now. Australia doesn't even. I don't think they even consider him Australian.
Just look like a guy like I look at Giannis, I look at Jokic, you look at Jamal, and you go, okay, look, these are guys who've been through deep NBA playoff runs. I mean, two guys just won a title. Giannis has never wanted to shy away from competition. He suits up for Greece all the time. I mean, the one thing you can't knock him is for how competitive he is, and he will physically build his body and throw his body into a season. So guys like that get a pass on this. Even like
he just also had knee surgery.
But like him being like, I'm gonna not push through, I'm gonna clean up my knee, and like you get a pass, cool. Even the guy but you look at Ben Simmons, it's like, shouldn't you be wanting to play? You haven't been on a basketball court. Like, it's a good Australian team that has plenty of NBA talent, both old and young. We'll get to the rosters in a bit. It's like, dude, this is a prime example or prime opportunity for you to come out, get some NBA competition. You'll be playing against teams that have multiple NBA players. You're not going to be like, at least Giannis, you're like, that poor guy is basically the whole team. Whereas Ben's going to be on the team where he's going to be surrounded by 4 or 5 legitimate NBA players. So it's like, dude, this would be a great opportunity.
More than that.
But I'm just saying, like, a big name guys that you can think off of the rip. I mean, they have Dyson Daniels, they have Giddey, Patty Mills is still there. I think Jock is out, but I mean, he was on the team. Like,
right. Joe Ingles, like guys that can help you carry that load, get some good graces going with fans of the sport. Like, hey, he's back and wants to compete. But I mean, are we all surprised? I don't think any of us are surprised. But it's what it is. It kind of sucks, but Ben Simmons is Ben Simmons. At least these other guys have somewhat of an excuse, whether it's a knee surgery or a deep playoff run in the NBA. Right. Speaking of which, Mikic said that he basically wants to prepare for his first NBA season. Understandable. Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind is the Olympics are next year. So if we're talking about good teams, they know they're going to be in the Olympics and they can do it next year. And if it comes down to the World Cup and the Olympics is more prestigious. So, yeah. So, and Jamal Murray, basically, who we know has an injury history, basically, talked about, the season being super long because they went all the way to the NBA Finals and won. And he's just playing it safe as a precaution. So, all right. Someone who this was actually something that caught everyone out of the blue. And it seems like the rigors of playing in the NBA, living in Spain, having an ACL injury in his 30s is kind of taking its toll on Ricky Rubio. And the veteran guard announced he is taking an indefinite mental health break and will not play for the Spanish national team. But indefinite does that mean he's even going to play for the Cavaliers? In the past, Rubio has basically said that he would like to finish his career in Spain. And I'm wondering if he's thinking that time is now. But for the Cavaliers, I mean, they're one of the thinnest teams in the league at guard. And right now their options at backup guard are Karis LeVert, Ty Jerome, and two-way guy Craig Porter, who was undrafted. So what do you guys you have any thoughts on what I'm thinking? Rubio wants to quit the NBA and just play in Spain this year. And where does that leave the Cavs?
Totally agree. I think his NBA days are probably done at this point, or incredibly numbered, and they really don't have a backup point guard. I mean, LeVert is more of a 2 combo guard. Ty Jerome is, for a team that is clearly all in on making a run and getting into this deep postseason, is not a guy I trust. And if I'm not going to trust Ty Jerome, I'm definitely not going to trust Craig Porter. So it's like you have 1 point guard on your roster. You have a great one in Darius Garland, but you have one point guard on your roster.
Yeah, who also has an injury history.
Exactly. So I think that, like, on paper, you'll be like, oh, it's Ricky Rubio. He's 32. He's a backup. But I'm like, the nice thing about Ricky Rubio, he's just a low-maintenance guy. He comes in. He's a floor-raising point guard where he's going to play make for others. He's not going to turn the ball over. Like, I think this hurts a lot more because if they are forced to play like a Caris LeVert at the 1, you have no true playmaker for a team that has a lot of players that need guys to get them the ball. Because, like, your bigs in Allen and Mobley aren't the type of dudes who can create on their own. Right. What's the I'm drawing a blank. The guy they just signed from the Heat, Strus. Strus isn't a guy that can create on his own. So it's like you don't have a facilitator. You're basically hoping Garland's giving you 10 plus assists a night, and that Mitchell's able to elevate his game as a playmaker.
Right now, of course, Mitchell can play at the point as well, but obviously a score first point.
Exactly. So Doc, I think this hurts more than you think.
Doc, you have any thoughts on since you're out there in Cleveland? What's the word on this situation?
Yeah, sorry to break it to you. Cleveland only cares about the Browns.
I can't deal with all this football stuff. Of course, Jake is taking over the working for the athletic department for the University of Pennsylvania, working for the football team. You guys, I don't know. We're gonna have to start censoring these football guys. All right, so moving on.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, seriously though, Ricky Rubio, if he wants to retire, he could. I know mental health with injuries is a big thing. I think a guy like Lonzo Ball might do that very soon too. But the Cavs, they probably just got to go out there and find a point guard, but it's hard. It's not that many true point guards out. Ricky Rubio is one of them. So they might have to find a way where Garland and Mitchell won't be on the court at the same time, and then you just sign another combo guard, but you just have Garland on the bench and let Mitchell run point, and you just switch off. And I think that's like their best option right now going into the season. And also, I heard someone mention Max Strus. I think all those guys. I think when guys, those undrafted guys, leave places that they was good at, I don't think they're gonna be successful in other places. I don't think Max Strus is gonna look the same in Cleveland. So
I agree.
Yeah.
A couple things about Rubio. I think one of the things for him has been the distance. I think he misses home, misses his family. The other thing is obviously his days of being an ultra productive player are over. And I just think you have to remember before Luka Doncic, there was Ricky Rubio. And people were tracking this kid when he was like 12 years old and saying, he was the next Pete Maravich or something. And Ricky Rubio was he was the shit, people were talking about him regularly when he was 16 years old. And so, he's probably kind of would just like to chill at this point. All right.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, so I was worrying. I'm sure that's true.
All right. So speaking of point guards, San Antonio point guard Devontae Graham was stamped with a 2-game suspension after pleading guilty to driving while impaired in North Carolina while he was a member of the Pelicans. The Spurs have multiple roster moves to make before the start of the season. They currently have 18 players under standard contracts, and the limit is 15. Working in Graham's favor is the fact that point guard is the team's biggest weak spot on the roster. However, Pop has never been really pretty much a no-nonsense guy. I wonder if a team like the Cavs might be talking about to San Antonio about Cameron Payne or Graham, who are both on the roster. I don't think the Spurs want both of those guys on the roster. One's more of a passer, one's more of a scorer. It's funny with Devontae Graham, though, when in Kansas, you never saw it. Ever since he's been in the NBA, he's been like a score-first point guard. But his passing, maybe I just overlooked it when I was reading him. But he really hasn't been much of a point guard. He's been more of a scoring guard. But Anyway, any comments on the San Antonio guard situation? All right, we'll move right along. All righty, so we're going to run down some more injuries that are affecting World Cup. None of these injuries are supposed to be long term. So Rockets backup center Jock Landale will not play for Australia due to an ankle injury. Alexei Pokashevsky, OKC forward, is not going to play for Serbia because of a shoulder injury. Frank Ntilikina is out for France. O'Shea Brissett is out for Canada. Corey Joseph is out for Canada. And, of course, Danilo Gallinari is out for Italy. We will talk about the impact of some of these when we get into the World Cup. The biggest news, injury news that is, involves Celtics' new big man, Kristaps Porzingis, who won't play for Latvia in the World Cup because of plantar fasciitis. Boston is saying he's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. So they're saying he could be back in a month. Training camp starts in 6 weeks. Okay, so they're saying he's going to be ready for training camp. That's being pretty damn optimistic against what is historically a stubborn injury that can last up to a year and a half. So this is something I think we need to talk about. Is Boston just blowing smoke up our butts, or what do we think here? Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I'm worried about this because this guy has an injury history and he's getting older. Like, if he was like, come on, you made this move, you gave up the heartbeat of your team, you went all in. And the reality is for this Boston team, we don't really care about the preseason, their offseason workouts. This team needs to make a run. And that's fine if he feels great now. But after playing basketball on an A2 game schedule, competitive games, is he going to be able to do this? And he's going to be good to go when he's got to go, play in these really high intensity playoff games, like when he has to guard Joel Embiid or a Giannis. Is he going to be able to do that when he has to run the court to Bam Adebayo? Like, is his foot going to hold up? Because if he's not ready to go, this team got objectively. If Kristaps cannot play at a high level, this team got worse without Marcus Smart. I think Kristaps and Marcus Smart are, from player to player, you could probably make the argument pretty even. Some do things better than the other, fine. But if you're factoring in this injury, and if Kristaps isn't 100%, you gave up the better player who was important to more than just the basketball aspect, but the leadership aspect, the mentality aspect. Like, the big knock on this team has been a kind of softness from Tatum and Brown. And Smart is definitely not soft. You can say what you want about him, but he's not a soft guy.
Right.
Porzingis leans more towards that kind of softness. So I'm worried. Am I on like a DEFCON? Was it 1 or whatever? I'm freaking out. No, but like, the bells and the flags have to go up, because this isn't a team that's trying to rebuild. This is a team that if they don't win a title in the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be very, very problematic, especially all the money they're going to have to start paying these guys.
Doc, what are your thoughts? Are we ready to write the Celtics off, or do you think they're being honest with us and he's going to be okay? I mean, when you think about it, without KP, they're talking. Their backup forwards are guys like Sam Hauser, small forward, really, Jordan Walsh, rookie, O'Shea Brissett, who's hurt himself, but even when he's healthy, he's not that great of a player. What do you think, Doc?
We'll see what happens during training camp. If they said 4 to 6 weeks, that's what we're gonna go by. I don't know if it's blowing smoke. I don't know the seriousness of the KP's injury. So we'll see. The NBA season is long, so even if he gotta miss the first month, that's fine. That's the good part about the NBA. You could miss the first month, and you could come back in December, and it'd be fine. So
that's
if he
true.
needs more time off, it's fine. Boston. Goal is to make it to the finals, and their team, even without KP, if he needs to miss, let's just say to December, they'll be all right. It's like I felt the same thing about the Sixers without James Harden in the regular season. They could win some games without James Harden in the regular season, until the playoffs come, then they lose first round. So, how long KP needed to rest and get better, I think Boston will be fine right now.
Cam, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with plantar's foot, right? Like the only way to really recover is to stay off of it.
Right.
Right. If anything, the Celtics are lucky that this popped up before World Cup play came around. He's still got some time to really just rest, right? He doesn't have to work out, whatever, right? Um, unfortunately, he's going to be coming into the season more than likely out of shape. His body's not going to be used to the kind of pounding that it's probably going to take. He'll certainly be playing center full time for the Celtics when he does return. Yeah, I mean it's a shame. They're going to be missing that roster spot that would have been Marcus Smart, right? A guy that was going to give them heavy minutes at a guard position. It makes them that much thinner. I mean, that's something we've been discussing with the Celtics moves this offseason.
Yep.
They're going to be reliant on Brogdon to stay healthy, Al Horford to play major minutes for them, Time Lord to stay healthy. It's just another chink in the armor. But I do agree with Doc. Like this team has the pieces to sort of maintain until he is fully healthy.
The problem I have with that theory, I agree, and you could cite 2 years ago around Christmas time, around New Year's, that that team was around 500 and they went on to the NBA Finals. However, the problem with injuries, I have always had this statement that I always use: injuries breed other injuries. And what I mean by that is, when somebody like KP is out, people like Jaylen Brown and Tatum need to play just a few more minutes here and a little more effort here, and then they get hurt. It just starts a chain reaction. So it can, at least, and I've seen it happen many times. So yeah, all right. Boston is they're definitely on thin ice. All right, so on to the Dallas Mavericks, and they bolstered their roster with 4 recent signings. They went with veteran forward Derrick Jones Jr., who played for Chicago last year. They signed him to a standard contract, and they signed guard Jordan Walker out of UAB, the rookie, wing Joe Wieskamp, and forward Greg Brown, all to Exhibit 10 deals. In my opinion, as far as Exhibit 10 guys go, this is a pretty impressive trio. And I think one of the 3 is likely to be upgraded to a two-way because the Mavs still have one two-way spot open. You like these signings of the Mavericks just did? I mean, I know they're not game changers, but I thought in terms of team building, they were pretty good. What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, as far as which of these Exhibit 10 guys are going to move over to hopefully move over to a two-way, I really like Greg Brown, his odds to make that jump. He looked really good in Summer League.
Yeah. Surprised the Sixers didn't keep him. Yep.
Yeah. And definitely a guy that would fit sort of the Sixers mold. Really athletic forward. He can stretch out to the wing. He's not a shooter, but he's a really quality cutter, strong defender. And I think he really fits in to a Luka Doncic style offense. Unfortunately, I think Derrick Jones Jr. kind of fits his role. So maybe it would end up being Joe Wieskamp, who they keep on a two-way, bring in a little bit more shooting, but still a guy with size.
They're definitely thin at point guard too, which points to Jelly Walker. So
yeah.
I mean, I think their number 3 point guard is a two-way guy right now. Their point guards are.
I mean, obviously they got Kyrie, and for their ball handling needs, I mean, between Kyrie and obviously Luka, I think they've got it covered.
Right.
They really just need that secondary option behind Doncic to begin with. That was what Brunson was for them. So Kyrie should be able to cover that. I think they're more concerned with wings. But this just adds to a really strong summer for Dallas. They were so thin coming into the offseason. I mean, that's part of the reason that they basically tanked to try and maintain their first round pick. And, as far as what they've done, with what they had. It's been a really great offseason for them. I'm excited to see, if they can make a jump back into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I agree. They have done a really nice job this offseason. Yeah. Mark, Doc brought up a good point about when we're talking about Jelly Walker and tiny point guards. What's going on with Marquise Noel, who was on the show not too long ago. He's on a two-way, and of course, Toronto right now. All signs of their point guards right now point to being a combination of Dennis Schroeder and Scotty Barnes. Malachi Flynn would be the third point guard. So, yeah, I think Marquise is in good shape there. All right. So another friend of the show, Drew Peterson, was finally signed by the Heat. He had a verbal commitment from them, but they waited, trying to see what was going to happen with any trades they were going to make. The Heat have filled their 21-man preseason roster, which will have to be cut down to 18. Do I have that right? Yeah. No. Or is it 16? It's 16, right? No, it's 18. It's 18. Thanks for the help, guys. All right.
I was confused too for a second. I was like, I'm not even sure at this point.
Yeah.
I was confused.
It used to be 17.
Yeah, 21
so
really threw me. I was like, is it really
18
21?
It's 18 now.
Wait, holy shit.
So basically the USC point forward is on an Exhibit 10, along with four other prospects, including Cole Swider and Justin Champagnie. The Heat, though, have no two-way spots open right now. So Peterson will likely have to have an excellent training camp to displace one of those current guys, or maybe be picked up by another team. Interesting enough, according to Shams via The Athletic, the Heat, speaking of their trades, Shams reported recently that the Heat have been prepared to offer the Trailblazers a package that included 3 or 4 first-round picks, with Tyler Hero going to a third team, and an expiring contract. So I guess they're talking about people like who's the shooter? Duncan Robinson, maybe guys like that. Kyle Lowry, and a young player such as Nikola Jovic. The only other option they really have in terms of young players is the kid from UCLA.
Jaquez.
You're right, Jaime Jaquez.
Yep.
So, and potentially second round pick swaps and or picks. So I guess my question here is, were you guys surprised to hear about this kind of deal that the Heat are offering and Portland wants more?
I mean, we look back at the Rudy Gobert trade and what they netted, and I think we all can agree that Dame is light years better than Rudy Gobert. And so it's like the Heat, the problem the Heat had is like they didn't really have that much to put on the table in terms of like, I mean, Tyler Hero's a piece. They're young guys, and
apparently he'd be going to a different team.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, you want to trade Dame for a bunch of picks, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it also sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that nobody else is really making a move for Dame. So, but I feel like both sides are kind of in this weird, like, the Heat don't really have the greatest package, so I don't think that the Blazers are wrong for saying no, but it doesn't sound like the Blazers have a lot of other suitors, at least as it stands. Now, I know we'll get into this, but I did hear some interesting potential. I was reading something where maybe if the Sixers really decide to just blow this thing up, somehow maybe Embiid makes his way up to the Pacific Northwest and they keep Dame, and the Blazers flip the script, and instead of going into a rebuild with the young guys.
We were actually talking, Doc and I, in a show back, we talked about Embiid actually going to Portland and Dame staying.
Yeah. Which actually might end up being a situation where all the parties involved end up coming out as winners, whereas this Heat trade, I don't know, like, yeah, first-round picks are great, but like our first-round picks, Jovic and Duncan Robinson, really worth the player of Dame's caliber, and Rudy Gobert netted what he netted. I can see where the Blazers are like, there's no way we can give Dame up for that haul, especially if the Heat, obviously depending on what year the picks fall, but like the Heat are going to be a good team, obviously, with the Dame Lillard. So it's like, are these picks even going to be that valuable if they're not pushed that far down the road? So I don't know. I think it's interesting where both these teams are at, because it feels like they don't have any choice but to like pursue one another. But it feels like both sides don't really want to, or at least the Heat do, but the Trailblazers don't.
Right. All right. We lost Doc, unfortunately, because now we're moving on to our weekly Sixers talk. And it's not our fault, folks. It's just the drama has really heated up there. You probably have to be living in the cave, not knowing what's going on. But of course, James Harden, while doing some promotion work for Adidas in China, he was giving a speech, and he called Daryl Morey. He said, "Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he is a part of again." And words so strong that he had to say the same thing twice. And then to add to the drama, Joel Embiid, I don't know, a few days later, removed all his references to his affiliation with the Sixers on social media. But all the reports I'm seeing is there's nothing to be made of that. That's just Joel Embiid being weird. I don't know about that. That's a weird way to be weird. And then lastly, the league is now, based on what Harden says, is ready to launch an investigation into the Sixers, seeing if they secretly agreed to a future contract. Basically, did they make a promise to Harden that they would pay him X amount of dollars this year if he took lower money last year, which would be against league rules. They already got penalized for similar stuff with Daniel House and PJ Tucker for kind of negotiating their contracts before free agency, and they ended up losing draft picks. So now what I've heard, though, is that Harden wasn't talking about that. Apparently, he was pissed off because the Sixers, just before he gave a speech in China, Sixers had said they had closed down, the Sixers said they had closed down negotiations with the Clippers and were kind of not looking to trade Harden anymore. I guess they just weren't happy with what they were getting. Of course, I've also heard that what they're asking for Harden has been exorbitant. I don't know about you, but I mean, how much better is Damian Lillard than James Harden?
I would say quite a bit. At this point in their careers, you could argue that Dame's 2022 season was the best of his career.
Yeah,
even
but
though
he didn't finish it. He came up,
but his
20, 30 games short?
Yes. But he was shut down, right? It wasn't out of injury.
He's 34 years old. He's actually older than Harden.
He is. And Harden looks like a shell of his MVP self.
Yeah,
I would say really since he left Houston and he kind of phoned it in with them at the start of a season, he hasn't been the same player.
Well, our I bring it up Hugh. We brought him up last week too. We can't get rid of Hugh. But Hugh actually saw Harden working out with Durant last summer, and he was really impressed with his fitness. And I thought Harden was in shape this year, and I thought he gave a good effort. But what disturbs me about Harden, and I think this goes back to the rule changes, the Reggie Miller, James Harden rules, where you couldn't get fouls all the time. And Harden just can't seem to knock down shots, outside shots, or inside shots for that matter, like he could. And so that's what, seemed like what really hurt the Sixers in the playoffs was, they really didn't have any. I mean, Maxey hot and cold, Harden hot and cold. They didn't have, and I think that's the difference. You can count on Lillard for a bucket. Can't count on Harden for a bucket anymore.
Yeah, I would say there's a difference between condition and ability.
Right.
I think
Right.
what he was referencing too in that off season was that he looked like he was in really good shape.
Right. Right.
And I think what he's lost is sort of that first step, which was what made him so unstoppable in Houston and was really what made him such a great sixth man when he was with OKC.
Well, he benefited a lot from the foul rules too.
He did. Yeah, but the foul rules, I mean, part of the reason that he was so great at getting fouled, especially at his peak, I mean, he was 12 free throws a game, was because he was such an excellent downhill attacker. Yeah, he was so like that Euro step was probably one of the hardest moves to defend in the NBA for a couple of years. And that was because of his burst combined with, his strength. He's a really strong guard.
Do you remember Ricky Rubio guarding him in the playoffs from behind?
Standing behind it? Yeah, I was going to say.
On purpose? Yeah. On purpose?
Yeah. I just, like, now that he doesn't have that burst, to me, like, you're getting, I don't want to say empty calorie assists, but he has a tendency to sort of open guys up, but it's out of his sort of hesitancy to score or lack of ability to score.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's holding the ball, and teams still respect him enough because of the spots he can get to, but he's not scoring out of those.
Especially inside. Yeah. Especially inside. Yeah. When he drives, he kicks. He rarely goes for the layup or the runner or whatever.
And that's great when you still have that combo option to score off of those paint touches, but he doesn't have the burst to finish over the top. It seems like even now, like the Sixers made a big deal out of his spot up attempts. Like, so if you're not getting a lot of it out of him as a ball handler, and he's not benefiting the offense as a spot up guy or away from the ball, I don't know how much he really brings you. Versus, to go back to the question that we started with, it's like, is Dame Lillard a more valuable player? I think he is. I think Dame can contribute off the ball. We haven't really seen him in a situation where he had to do that, but could he fit in as a more Steph-like shooter? I think he could. I mean, he's a superior spacer.
His efficiency would probably reach new peaks too.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. But I'm just at 34 years old and coming off, an injury year. I'm not selling the farm to, get this guy. I'm not saying what Miami offered is bad, but I'm just saying, yeah.
Yeah, I think that at this point, the best situation we were talking about just to maintain parity in the league, nobody gets burned, is if Embiid ended up on the Blazers. They'd get the best player in the trade, the reigning MVP. Portland has more than enough picks and young guys that they've accumulated that the Sixers wouldn't be left with. They'd have a pretty bright future and have some instant impact guys right away. Like
you also have to unload Harden too, so you're gonna have to.
Yeah, you could probably get some team to take Harden though. I feel that like the name, I think we've seen it enough in the NBA. Again, there's guys that I think just box score watch and go, yeah, but he can still give you, those 20 points and 8-9 assists a night, but they don't, that's great. It's that I can fix him kind of thing. Like I can fix James. I'm going to put him into the D'Antoni like offense, and we're going to fix things. He's not that same guy anymore. And I think fundamentally the biggest thing I have with Dame and Harden, at least for me, is like I agree with everything Cam said. I think Dame is just better at this point. But I feel like one guy still likes basketball. I think the other one, it's just a hobby at this point. I mean, I'm just being completely honest. I mean, Harden's talking about, I want to play a year in China because the fans love me so much. And I could show up to games fat and out of shape, but I'm James Harden. Everyone's going to love me. I just really think that's where his head's at now.
Do you know he has been under the fan spotlight going all the way back to Arizona State when they bombed in the NCAA tournament? So James Harden's history of bombing in the playoffs actually started at Arizona State when he bombed in the NCAA tournament. So yeah, for somebody who's never won anything at any level, I mean, okay, maybe he did it AAU or high school, I don't know, but yeah.
But I've got some AAU trophies in my closet if you want to see those. So, I mean, I was an AAU. I won some AAU stuff too. So I mean, Harden and I are on the basketball court. Harden and I have probably won the same number of championships here and there. I'm sure he did it at a couple better showcases than I did, but I don't know. I think at this point, like with James Harden, you just have to understand that basketball is probably not his passion anymore. If it's just not his passion anymore. And I think empty calories, like Cam said, is kind of a fair analysis. Like he's going to put butts in seats. He's going to have a couple of vintage games like he had in the playoffs where he goes for 40 and all that. But the problem is you're asking him to be James. You thought you were pairing Houston James Harden with MVP Joel. That's just not what you were doing. And so now your second best player is still a defensive liability, isn't getting to the free throw line, is not really a true playmaker. Like, yeah, he's, NBA assists are always kind of weird like that. Like, yeah, if I pass an open shooter in the NBA, you're probably going to get an assist because it's such high-level talent. It's different than a Jokic who's passing guys open. So, yeah, I don't know. But I do agree. You sell the house for Dame Lillard and hope that him and Embiid can win a title in 2 years and they both stay healthy. Also risky.
Well,
the Sixers are just in a bad spot.
Right. And we're the only ones talking about this. So, Doc, we lost you for a minute. We're talking basically about Harden's comments in China, Embiid getting rid of his social media references to the Sixers, and lastly, we mentioned the NBA is now going to investigate the Sixers for making verbal agreements making promises of certain things to Harden. So what do you make of the latest drama in Philadelphia? What do you think is going to happen now? I mean, Harden says he's not showing up for training camp. Collective bargaining agreement is if he stays out too long, I don't know how many days, but if he stays out, it's not very long, he won't get credit for this season. So under, in terms of free agency, I believe. So anyway, what are your thoughts, Doc, on this latest drama with the Sixers?
James Harden, and I thought James Harden and Daryl Morey and PJ Tucker was all best buds. I thought there was the three amigos. I don't know what's going on. I guess he promised him some money after Harden took that pay cut last year. He's not giving that money. He's trying to do what's best for the Sixers right now, but he should do what's best for his best friend that got him there. But hey, he backstabbed him. I guess the owner, Josh Hart, put a lot of pressure on Morey to do something and don't pay Harden. That he liked the Harden performance. And I guess he got his boss. He still, even though Morey is president, still got a boss, which is the owner. So I guess that's what happened. I think it came down from the real top. Josh Hart said something, but the face is Morey as being a liar because he did a tough bid between paying his friend James Harden and his boss saying don't pay him. We're not doing that. Secondly, James Harden's comments in China was crazy. I thought that was an AI talking at first. When it was confirmed that was real, that was surprising. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But I think he did that because Daryl Morey had previously China. I guess China don't like Daryl Morey for something he did back in days with Houston. So I think it was just propaganda going on, and everybody was clapping. About the Joel Embiid trade, I don't think the Sixers, they would never trade Embiid. I just don't see it right now. I don't think, even if he asked for a trade, I think they would still hold out. I think they would still hold out. The same way how Portland's kind of holding out with Damian Lillard right now. I think they will hold out till the humongous trade come about and then they'll take it. So, but James Harden's situation is unfortunate because it's like we're doing the same thing. We basically traded James Harden. I've been calling James Harden Ben Simmons anyway because in the playoffs, he turned into Ben Simmons the first year when he didn't want to shoot the ball. Last year, he did his thing. Don't get me wrong. But he still, he came short in Game 7, of course. But him and Ben Simmons got some similarities. And it's like, I still say the trade is even. The Sixers still lose second round. And now they got to go through this again while I traded him. And actually, James Harden trade value is lower than Ben Simmons trade value was when Sixers was able to trade him. I don't know why the Sixers was waiting to trade James Harden. They get to trade into the Clippers and get those guys, but they so stuck on Terrence Mann. I don't think it's that big of a difference.
Apparently, I read, I forget who, but someone said that Terrence Mann thing is bullshit. It was in the Athletic. Somebody in the Athletic said it's not true. That's not the sticking point. Maybe it was Shams. But yeah, I can't believe that Terrence Mann is holding up that either. My feeling is that the Clippers just aren't that excited about getting Harden, especially, they got Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook played light years better than Harden in the playoffs last year. So, I just don't think the Clippers need another headache. Go ahead, Cam.
The thing that really just boggles my mind with this whole thing is that James Harden has locked himself into this issue. He could have become a free agent this offseason.
Yeah.
Right? He opted into his contract just to then ask for a trade that he's not going to get.
That made absolutely no sense. So that's where, it almost seems like he wanted to cause trouble. Because here's what I think it is. I think he's afraid that he wouldn't have got as much as what he did get. I think he goes around talking like, he's a top 5 player and deserves top 5 money. But if he seriously thought that, he would have gone into free agency, right? Yeah.
I mean, just to give you one destination off the top of my head, I mean, Sacramento, the Kings had a huge spot. They had nearly a max slot available, and all the talk was about them using it on Draymond Green, right? Like, you can't tell me that they wouldn't have leapt to sign James Harden. But again, like you're saying, Rich, would he have gotten that max money? Would he have reached that 32 mil mark, which is what he opted into? I doubt it. I think at this point in his career, he's more of a 25 mil a year type of player.
San Antonio, I mean, in terms of, I know San Antonio's not trying to win now, but it would have been nice to have a nice experienced point guard to, run the pick and roll with Wembanyama. And they had the money to sign him. Had.
Well, this is just a guy who wants his cake and wants the cake, wants to eat it too, whatever the saying is.
He definitely eats his cake.
I set you up for that one. I made that one way too easy. This is just like, he wants the money. He wants the prestige of being viewed as, an NBA, all that, like an all-NBA, NBA All-Star. But then I don't think wants the burden of having to be the best guy, doesn't want the burden. Like, if you look at all of his moves, he brought Westbrook on, didn't work, and then he goes and pairs up with KD and Kyrie, doesn't work, and he pairs up with Joel Embiid, doesn't work. So it's like, do you want to win? Do you want to just ride off into the sunset, collect your money, and not really worry about anything? Like, what do you want? Like, you can't expect 32 plus million, go to a team and then go, but I don't want to produce like that. I want to give you, like Cam said, like 20, 25 million effort. Like, does he just think that because my name is James Harden, like, you're going to sign me, I'm going to give you whatever I feel like giving you, and you're going to give me money, and we're all going to be happy in a salary cap sport? I firmly believe that he's kind of delusional about what his value is at this point. And I just don't think, again, I really question where James Harden's head at is in terms of what he wants to do with basketball. Like, you can't say 1 minute you want to go contend and want to go to these loaded teams and pair it with superstars, and then the next minute go, I might play in China for a year or two.
Right, he said he wanted to play in China.
Those two things don't add up. Like, imagine Steph Curry saying, I want to win an NBA title, but I'm also really interested in going and playing in Spain for a while. Because it's like, those two things don't compute.
China would be perfect for Harden. That's where 40-year-old former NBA guys go to average 30 points a night.
China will give him everything he wants. They will pay him. He will be the best player on the court by just virtue of being James Harden.
His minutes will be limited because they have a rule about that.
Yeah, and he could show up 45 pounds. It doesn't matter. It won't matter.
Oh yeah, I mean Harden could score 40 in China when he's 45. So, Doc, why do you think? Why did Harden not just go? If he wanted out of Philadelphia, why did he not opt in and just become a free agent?
I think this is with the confusion. I thought he should have opted out at that time. I thought Harden was actually, looking back at it, I thought Harden was holding us up in terms of not knowing what he wanted to do in terms of stay with Philly or leave Philly. I think he was told something that made him opt in, and whatever he was told that made him opt in, that they was going to give him a long-term contract. Like, you could opt in, and then we're going to promise you to do this and that. Something happened during the summer where they must have had a conversation. They said, we're not doing that no more. Just play out this season. You could become a free agent next year. And that's probably why he got mad and is now doing all this complaining and all of this. Like, he probably needed, like, hey, give me some money through the back table, give me a couple 15 mil underneath the table or something. They're not giving him that money. I don't know what it is. They're not going to come out and say it. This is why I can't wait. I love when NBA players retire, because when they retire, then they come out.
Well, the NBA's investigating it now because they want to find out if there's been any kind of side deals that aren't allowed.
And I think something like that happened. I think that's what happened, because there's no way, it would be no point for him to opt. He waited so long to opt in. He opted in, and then now there's a couple months, 2 months later, he's saying he don't want to, something was lied about. It's not like he opted in, and I don't think they can just give him an extension when he opted in. I don't believe they could do that yet. I think they have to wait until a certain month, like January, to even give him an extension. If you want. So it had to have been some backdoor type of money type situation. I think that's where the investigation is coming from.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to FIBA World Cup play, which starts on August 25th. And there's a large slate of NBA talent across the World Cup rosters. I would say probably more than ever before. However, as we noted, injuries and a couple of personal decisions, or a handful of personal decisions, have probably watered down the field somewhat. Team USA seems to be the hands-down favorite, but are there teams that can beat them? We will determine that, and we'll also be talking about players who are in this draft class, in this upcoming 2024 NBA draft, who might make an impact, or definitely players at least to keep an eye on, and also some younger guys who the NBA might want to reach out to. So we'll start with Group A, and that's the Dominican Republic, Italy, the Philippines, and Angola. And Drew, I'm going to start with you. Who do you like in this group?
And I'm sorry, you cut out there. Group A.
Group A.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at it, I'm not overly familiar with any of these countries, really. It seems to be like definitely one of the weaker groups. I know that there's kind of the perennial powerhouses nationally. So kind of looking at the roster, I'd probably lean the Dominican Republic. They do have the best player in this area. I mean, Carly Towns, whether you hate him or love him, is still an NBA all-star, low-end, all-NBA type caliber player. I've seen Lester play, obviously. I know, Rich, you and I had plenty of discussions about Montero, was it last year when he was coming in the draft? So in a situation where I'm not overly familiar top to bottom with everybody, I'm going to take the team with the best player, and that's going to be Dominican Republic.
Right. I would agree that Dominican Republic, I favor them over Italy. But yeah, I definitely think they have pretty good depth. They have Angel Delgado, the rebounding machine from Seton Hall. They have LJ Figueroa, who's kind of like a Swiss Army knife from St. John's. And of course, they have Lester Quinones. The shooting guard from Memphis is now with Golden State. So yeah, I think they have enough talent to get through this region. What do you think, Cam?
I'm excited to see if actually G Montero can actually contribute with this team. I think they really have a need for that sort of point guard depth. I think that's about as far. That's going to be like the defining factor for how far this team can go beyond group play. I think they are the favorites to come out of this group, especially since Karl-Anthony Towns is by far the highest profile NBA prospect or NBA player in this group. And they've got some other solid guys. They got Lester Quinones, who's been really solid for their team. Kind of a combo forward, stretches out to the wing, really complements Towns really well. And Towns, like having seen him play in some of these warm-up games, he's really shooting the ball well. I mean, even for him, we totally know what he's capable of in terms of his shooting, but it's nice to see him in that real sort of attack mindset offensively, and they need his production. But Montero, I mean, he had a really solid year. Playing in Spain, I believe. I think he was up over 17 points per game, which is really nice.
Yeah, in the Spanish league, hell yeah.
Yeah. His shooting numbers aren't incredible. He was around 35% last season. But we're talking about a guy that, was really high on draft boards when he came out of Overtime Elite and ended up going undrafted. Opted to go back and play in Europe.
Well, the Knicks had him on a training camp roster, but they ended up cutting him. So instead of going to the G League, he opted to go to Spain.
Yes. And he didn't get a lot of run with that Summer League stint.
Right.
But I think if he can come in and be productive for them in this World Cup, this is a guy that I could see signing an NBA contract in the next year or two. Really solid ball handler, good passing chops, and I think his scoring upside is really what the Dominican Republic needs from him, and is what I think can get him on an NBA roster sooner rather than later.
I think another guy, similar type of guard, that's on that team, that's a player to watch, in the NBA, for those who are searching for a point guard, is Andres Feliz out of Illinois. He's 26 years old, so he's in the prime of his career. And last year in Euro Cup in Spain, he shot 49% from the field, 38% from deep, 75 from the line. He averaged 3.3 assists on only 22 minutes per game. Had about a 2-to-1, better than a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So this guy is also kicking butt in Spain. And so I think, you have two really underrated explosive guards. And yeah, you're right. It's probably going to come down, to how well these guys play, because we know what Towns can do. And you will find as we go through this that there are a lot of teams in this event that are hurting for guards. So guard play, I think, is going to be crucial. So, all right. So other players in this region you might want to keep an eye on are two guys we talked about not last year or not this year on the show, but in season 1, we did a special on international prospects. I know Drew was there for that. And we talked about Gabriel Posada and Matteo Spagnolo. And both of them were drafted that year. And so I couldn't tell you exactly which teams own their draft rights, but they're both, can come over to the NBA. And people do own their draft rights. Another player to watch, the Philippines has Jordan Clarkson, but they also have Kai Soto, and he plays for the Philippines. I think he's 7'3". He was an Ignite player that didn't get a lot of playing time. He was with that initial class that was pretty well stocked, and so he didn't get a ton of playing time, but he's doing pretty well in the Australian League. He's still very young. And so, a lot of people considered him a draftable prospect that year, but I think he was just too raw and they didn't see enough of him with Ignite. He really didn't play a lot. So, he's another guy that could come over eventually. So, all right. So we'll move on to Group B. That is Serbia.
Real quick, Rich.
Sure.
One thing I did want to hit on with the Italian team is I'm hoping that they end up matching up with Team USA at some point. Because there was a little bit of drama as far as actually one of the Team USA players, actually Paolo Banchero, had interest in joining the Italian national team.
Right.
And has actually opted to join the USA team. There's a very clear possibility that he would have been playing with Italy.
Right.
Also, I've been hearing a lot of really good buzz about Matteo Spagnolo. He had a solid year in Europe, but supposedly with this FIBA team, he's looking like he's ready to kind of take a leap.
Both of those guys could score, man.
Yeah, excited to see them.
Yeah. All right, so Group B, we have Serbia without Joker and without Mikic. We have China that features Kyle Anderson and a bunch of Chinese players. Imagine that. We have the South Sudan, which actually has some familiar names, especially if you're a college basketball fan, and Puerto Rico, which actually has a lot of familiar names. But yeah, and actually, I could, there's 8 guys on that Puerto Rican roster that are actually having, solid pro careers either in Europe or in the G League. So I'll start with you, Cam. Who do you like in this region?
It's true. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting talent to hit on in this particular group, but I think even without, their 2 of their really star players, Serbia is pretty clearly the favorite to come out of this group. I got a chance to see them in a couple of these warm-up games, and this is just they play so well together, and this is a team that clearly has a lot of reps with one another. Defensively, they're very solid. They attack at the point of like they at the dribble. God, I can't talk today. They really do a great job attacking ball handlers. And they also, even though they don't have that strong interior presence that they would have had with Jokic, they've got solid bigs.
They got a lot of
throughout
big
their throughout
this
their
team,
roster.
This team is huge.
Oversized.
This team is huge.
This team is
oversized.
Yeah,
I think they're oversized. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Jovic is essentially their shooting guard. Bogdanovic plays actually a pretty big chunk of point guard for them.
Right, because
he's
out of necessity.
He looks great. Yes, yeah, and he just looks excellent. This is probably Bogdanovic. Like when he plays in the NBA, is a different player from international ball. Similar to a guy like Evan Fournier. Like when they play for their national team, totally different players. Bogdanovic is a grade A scorer in international ball. Great passer too. Really excited to see what this team can do beyond group play, because I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that they're making it out of this group.
Right. So he goes about 6'6". The rest of the starting lineup is going to be somewhere between 6'9" and 7'1". All right.
They're also fast. Like that's something that I think that's what I was trying to get at when they attack ball handlers. Like, even though they're oversized, this team is very quick, very limber. They get out in transition, even though they're massive.
Right. Drew, what do you got in this region?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam's pretty spot on here. I think this is a 2-horse race. Serbia is definitely the favorite. I actually got a chance to see the Puerto Rican team when they played USA. I think they were in Vegas when they played. This was obviously early in the FIBA process, and they hung in there. I mean, for the first half, it was a very close game, and they were going bucket for bucket with USA and with the USA team. And when I realized that Ethan Thompson and Tremont Waters were there, it kind of started to make sense. Those are guys that, college basketball fans. Waters out of LSU and Thompson was Oregon State, I believe.
Yes.
And both those guys were about, I think when they left college, were in the 16-point per game region.
Ethan Thompson was one of the best players in the G League last year.
Yeah, like they looked really, really good. They're not a super big team, and there's definitely
that's a problem.
That was the biggest issue is they couldn't once the USA team went big, they kind of threw out their oversized roster and they got really long and really big. They struggled. Yeah. But those two players, man, Thompson and Waters, particularly out on the perimeter, and I think it was in that game, Waters was going bucket for bucket with Jalen Brunson, Tyrese. So those two give them that sneaky 1-2 punch scoring wise that they could, if those guys get kind of hot, they could give teams trouble. But I mean, this is Serbia's group to lose. Yeah, I mean, Serbia is just so much bigger than in the Puerto Rican team. Across the board. I mean, I was looking at their roster. I like what's his name? I think we have a number 2, Marko Duric. Yeah, he had a cup of coffee in the NBA. Yeah, he had a season or two. I think he was with the Grizzlies, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, you are correct. And he I just pulled up his numbers recently. I'm like, oh, what's he been up to?
Oh,
I don't know. He's
well.
almost a 50, 40, 90 shooter, averaging about 13 a game in EuroLeague play. So you're like, okay, so yeah, okay, NBA didn't really work, but this guy can absolutely play. So when you combine their size with the fact that they're gonna have the best player on the court in Bogdanovic, and then quite possibly, given their Euro resumes, might have the 2 or 3 best players, and they're definitely bigger pretty much across the board. I don't see how Serbia doesn't win this group.
Right. I think what the interesting battle is going to be for second place, because the second place team in all these regions will also qualify for the one and done round. So basically what happens is the teams are cut in half. So the top 2 in each group goes into a Sweet 16, and then it's a straight on tournament. And so I think Puerto Rico, South Sudan, or China could come in second. I think, and we haven't talked about South Sudan, but I'll tell you what, they have like a grade A, and I don't mean this as a slight, they have a grade A G League starting 5. And not all these guys play in the G League, but I'm saying if they played in the G League, this would be a really, really good G League team. They have Carlik Jones, who's with the Bulls. They have Wayne Gabriel, who's with the Lakers. They have Mariel Shayok, who was out of Iowa State, was drafted by the Sixers, who's doing well in the G League. They have Peter Jock, who's a scoring machine out of Iowa. And then they have Mangok
Matang.
Is that how you say it?
I think it's Matang, yeah.
Yeah, it's
okay.
French.
Mangok Matang, who is a big out of Louisville, big sturdy body, doing well. I forget what level, but somewhere in Europe at a decent level. So yeah, they have a solid starting 5, but that's about where it stops. One player I want to mention, and I know there's one player that Cam wants to talk about, but the player I want to talk about is a draft prospect for this year. And even though he won't turn, he just turned 18 about a week ago. And that is Nikola Topic, who plays for Serbia. As I said, just turned 18. This kid is going to be, I'm thinking right now on our draft board, which isn't published, by the way, folks. So I'm just going to tell you, right now he's in the 40s, but I could see this guy getting close to the lottery. And I think what he does here, is going to, influence that. But in the Serbian league last year, he 55% from the floor, 37% from deep, 85% from the free throw line. Now this is 17.8 points per game, about 4 rebounds a game, over 5 assists per game, and 1.5 steals per game. This kid has been doing well at other international events, other FIBA events, been standing out. He's a really, for example, the under European 18 Euro Championships, they won gold this summer, and he was probably the Serbian MVP. So this is a player you definitely want to keep an eye on. He's going to be on our draft board, and he's going to be high. And he actually might prove handy with Vasily Mikic not playing. He might, they are short on point guards. And so he might actually see a little more playing time than one would expect. So Cam, I know there's somebody you want to talk about who I am not familiar with, but you made me add to our draft board.
Yeah, so I got a chance to see the South Sudan team play against Australia in a friendly comp game. And they made it pretty competitive. They had a shot at winning the game down the stretch, but kind of fell off towards the end. But in the last couple minutes, South Sudan kind of cleared their bench, and they put this 16-year-old kid in. He's 7'1", and in these last couple of minutes, he had 7 points, 4 rebounds. I mean, it's literally like he played 6 minutes, 7 points, 4 rebounds, throw in a block. I think he had a steal in there. But this 7'1" kid, he's 16, was still playing against the rotation Australian team. He had one of the prettiest plays I've seen in any of these friendly competition games so far. He stole it. He was playing in the middle of the paint, stole the dump off pass off of his guy. So he very smartly helped to find this steal, burst through. All 7'1" of him is sprinting the ball up the court. He threw it ahead, give and go style, and he dunked over two guys. It really, like, the play types that he had in these 7 minutes blew my mind. He hit a three. He had a short post catch off of a drive and dish. He pump faked, took one dribble up the paint, and then basically Derrick Rose jump stopped it, finished. He also had a tip off the offensive boards. His name's Kaman Malwatch. This kid's 16. He's not going to be on draft boards for a while, but I was looking into him. Yeah, I was looking into him, and he actually already has offers from Duke, from UCLA, and from Georgetown. He's a part of the NBA basketball academy in Africa. Really, really like this guy. Super dexterous. I wouldn't be shocked to see if he gets more minutes with them in the incoming group play, because he looked really impressive and just brought so much like spark to their team. But yeah, I actually kind of like South Sudan to bring home second from this bracket. I actually got the chance to see Serbia play Puerto Rico in a friendly, and they absolutely mopped them. Granted, they're probably holding some punches for the actual group play, but that looked like not a fair matchup. South Sudan actually has the size to match up well, as does China, but I think South Sudan's got a little bit more guard play than China does. Mariel Shayok has looked awesome so far. And I'd really like to see him get a second look from NBA squads. I would not be shocked to see that happen.
Yeah, he's been doing consistently well in the G League.
Yeah, I mean, that guy, he's got elite NBA wing size, but he can really score the ball.
Yeah. He's always been a good shooter and a good shot creator.
Yeah, yep. But yeah, definitely like Serbia to come out. And I think South Sudan's my pick for the second team out of this group.
Okay. All right. So now let's move on to Group C, which features the USA, Greece, New Zealand, and Jordan. And I don't see anybody personally who's going to give the USA much trouble. I've seen Greece play twice. I've seen Greece lose twice pretty handily. The U.S., I mean, they hung around with the U.S. for a while, but, you know, ultimately, I don't think there was much. It really wasn't too troublesome for the USA. And then I saw Germany beat them up. So, yeah. So, any thoughts on this region? I'll start with you, Drew.
Yeah, I think USA walks pretty smoothly through this one. I'm not super familiar with the New Zealand or Jordan team. I mean, I recognize some of the names we have in there, but we have one name per each team, so it doesn't seem like this is a loaded squad. So I think by default, you know, Greece is probably going to get my silver medal nod here, just because I recognize some of these players. I'm like, these are guys who have played at an NBA level, or I've seen them play on the FIBA level before, and they've held their own. I mean, obviously, Greece not having Giannis basically removes them from any real deep contention, I think, to most people. But yeah, I mean, the USA is going to win this one. I think Greece comes in second, and those two advance.
Yeah. How about you, Cam? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's good to see that FIBA is still taking bribes even in basketball play, because this is by far the weakest group. The USA is going to walk through
Slovenia. Slovenia is the region, really. But I mean, we'll get there. But I have some comments about that region.
Oh yeah, that one's rough too. But yeah, I mean, granted, if Giannis was playing for the Greek team, this would be quite a bit more competitive. But I mean, even without Giannis, Greece, I think, is the clear favorite to be the second team out of this group.
Yes.
New Zealand and Jordan, they don't have a whole lot. Team USA, this is an interesting squad. I think I heard Gilbert Arenas describe this team as the C team, something like that, or something to that effect. Anthony Edwards has been pretty clearly, sort of the alpha of this year's squad. They've got really strong guard play, really strong wing play. Just to list off the team for our listeners, we've got Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, Paolo Banchero absolutely snubbed the Italian team to join Team USA. Jaren Jackson Jr., Mikal Bridges, Brandon Ingram, Cam Johnson, Josh Hart, Walker Kessler, Austin Reeves, and Bobby Portis. I really foresee, Team USA's one issue with international play is going to be the interior play. Jaren Jackson, obviously he doesn't even play center in the NBA, but he's by far sort of the most proven front court player on this team. Banchero's looked good. He's been actually playing most of the backup center minutes. And of course they got Walker Kessler there for some backup.
And Portis, which is smart given Jackson's injury history and foul history.
Yep, Portis is going to be a big presence, but my fear is that if they, say match up with a team like France that has a really established interior, granted you can feel about Rudy Gobert however you'd like, but his game is basically built for international play. Correct. He's a different monster when it comes to international basketball. This team could struggle defensively. But at the same time, that this isn't the same sort of Team USA monster offensively that we've seen in the past. Right? They rely pretty heavily on Edwards, on Brunson, and actually on Brandon Ingram to really put up most of their points. Austin Reeves has looked good in friendly play so far. He actually had 31 points, I think, in their last game. So they'll figure out the scoring in all likelihood, but this group isn't going to be any kind of problem for Team USA.
Right. The one player I would like to mention in this region is also going to be a draft prospect. Top 100 guy, I would think. He was on top 100 on our board last year, so there's no reason to think he won't. I don't know how much playing time he's going to see. He's a power forward. His name is Lefteris. Oh, my goodness, these Greek names. Mantouzukas? You think I'm getting close? But what he is a 6'9" power forward who can shoot. So just as an example, what he did last year in the Greek League and Euro League combined, he averaged about 16 minutes per game, shot 49% from the field, 41% from deep on 2.2 attempts per game. But if you double his minutes, which would be more realistic, that's up to 4 attempts per game. 68% from foul line, not so great, but the guy is actually, I don't know if I would call him a power forward, maybe more of a big small forward, but yeah, he's definitely a kid to watch. One of the more productive youngsters, not only in Greece, but in Europe. And he is only 20 years old. He just turned 20. So any other comments about this region before we move on to D?
Yeah, I got to give some love to Thomas Walkup.
Oh, yeah.
He's been like the Greek MVP so far without Giannis. Mm-hmm. If you don't remember Thomas Walkup, just think back to that Stephen F. Austin March Madness run. Mm-hmm. He was the lumberjack that was killing everybody. That was Thomas Walkup. He's playing for Greece. Do me a favor, go and watch him. He's been killing it. Yep. He's shooting the hell out of the ball and really just dominating offensively.
Yeah, he's a hustler. He's all over the floor. A little bit of everything. Definitely enjoyed his game, and I actually thought he would get more NBA looks than he did. All right, so Group D features Lithuania, Montenegro, Mexico, and Egypt. What do you got here, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, Lithuania and Montenegro are pretty set up to come out of this group. This is sort of, these are kind of your classic FIBA World Cup play rosters, sort of dominated by a couple of NBA bigs. Obviously, Lithuania has Jonas Valanciunas. Actually, a guy that we've neglected to mention is not playing in international ball as well as Domantas Sabonis. He would have been with the Lithuanian team as well. Would have been a hell of a front court, but obviously Valanciunas is sort of the headliner, and a few guys that have played some NBA minutes or have yet to play NBA minutes that we should mention from them. Ingis Brazdankis played in the NBA for a short stint. Domantas Montaiunas, you might remember him from his stint with the Rockets. But Rokas Jokubaitis is probably the guy to look for if you're looking for a young NBA prospect that is looking to come over. Rokas, I believe he's a 6'6" wing.
No,
maybe a little
he's
bit shorter.
Point guard, isn't he? He's point guard.
Oh, he plays wing. He is actually he's 6'4".
Real GM has him at 6'4".
Yeah. I believe that the Knicks have his rights. I could be mistaken.
Yes. OKC traded them to New York.
Yep. He's a strong his NBA skill set is really based on his playmaking. And he's going to play a big role for them this year, especially setting up Jonas Valanciunas and Monty Eunice as well. I'd like that team to come out number one from this group, but you gotta like what Montenegro has too. Yeah.
I agree. I don't see much with Mexico and Egypt. Drew, who do you like here?
Yeah, I'll take Lithuania here and then Montenegro coming in second. I think it's pretty clear these two are going to be battling it out, and I wouldn't be surprised if that flips if Montenegro wins and Lithuania takes second here. I'm not overly familiar with the Montenegro roster outside of Vucevic, who we all know has been an NBA All-Star and has been a mainstay as one of the solid bigs in the NBA for the last couple of years, from the Magic to the Bulls. I do think one thing to take note is, as I was reading up on some of these teams, Lithuania has played, I believe, the most tune-up games of any team. They've played like 11 games in preparation up to the tournament. I mean, obviously, you always worry about, are you burning guys or peaking too early or burning guys out? But I caught a couple of glimpses and they've looked pretty sharp. And I think that's a testament to just playing a lot. A lot of these teams are still trying to figure out, well, maybe this is more of a USA problem, but teams, are still trying to figure out top rotations, how many minutes the young guys deserve. I think this Lithuania team is coming in with a pretty clear mindset of what their team is going to look like in terms of starters, key subs, and situational, like how to respond to different situations. So I'm going to give Lithuania the nod, but I really don't see a massive gap between these two teams. If this is like a 1A, 1B for me. And that might be because I'm not super familiar with either roster too much.
Yeah, I agree. It's close. I like Lithuania, and one of the reasons why I like Lithuania is Tadas, and God forgive me for if I butcher his name, but I'm very familiar with who he is. Serdakurskis. All right, so I'm going to tell you this story. He was born in 1998, and when people were talking about the 98 class, because that's how they discuss international prospects, by the year they were born, not by the year they're graduating high school. So in that 98 class, there was probably a time when he was considered a top 5 European prospect. What happened was he started playing in the Lithuanian league, and he was doing so well. They wanted to move him up to Spain to match his abilities, and also the better training facilities they had in Spain and so forth to develop his game. And he moved to Spain in 2019-20, and then he got hurt in 2020-21. I believe, and it was a back injury. And so it kind of derailed his career. He kind of struggled in Spain, and everybody kind of forgot about him, figuring out, okay, he's apparently the back injury was, kind of concerning. And so everybody, including myself, kind of forgot about him. And then when I got to this competition, I looked at what he's doing now. And this past year, in EuroLeague, in Spain, the toughest competition you can play outside of the NBA, played 20 minutes a game, shot 59% from the floor, 35% from deep, 82% from the foul line. This is only on 20 minutes a game. 4.7 rebounds per game, 1.3 assists, almost a steal per game. So yeah, I think Tadas is a sleeper in this tournament and is going to be one of the keys. One of the reasons why I kind of like Lithuania over Montenegro. I also think that Lithuania just has more playmakers, with Jukabatis and even Tomas Timsa. A lot of guys can make plays. I mean, Brzezikis, if you remember him with Michigan, I mean, he was a point forward. And
he
so
made some plays back in college,
right? Yeah, and Montejunas, the Montejunas we saw in the NBA is not the Montejunas that at least when he was younger. He was considered a unicorn. He was before KP. And he was like the first time people, started. I mean, I think he was one of the first unicorns. But when he came over here, he just looked like a traditional center. But
yeah, and he couldn't defend an anthill. That was his issue.
Right. All right, so we all like Lithuania in that group. All right, so let's move on to Group E, and I think this is one of the more interesting groups there are out there. We have Australia. Led by a lot of players you're familiar with: Josh Giddey, Josh Green, Dyson Daniels, Matisse Thybulle, Joe Ingles, Patty Mills, Dante Exum, Duop Reith for LSU fans, Xavier Cooks, who's been cooking in the Australian League, and Jack White, who's just recently signed with the OKC Thunder. Germany's got the Wagner boys, Dennis Schroeder, Daniel Tice, Isaiah Bonga, you might remember if you're a Wizards fan, and he's playing much better than he in Germany now. He's finally settled down. He's finally got somewhat of a jump shot. And a young kid named Justice Hollatz, who's really doing well. I thought he was in this last past draft. I thought he might be a draft and stash guy. He's a really good playmaker. Finland has Lauri Markkanen, Mario Little going to Baylor, freshman at Baylor, highly regarded freshman recruit. They also have Mikhail Jutinen. If you remember, he was a player for Utah. He's a stretch 4. They have Olivia Kamwa, who's transferring to Michigan, and Jacob Grandison, who just finished his career at Duke, disappointing year at Duke. And then we have Japan, who has the I'm screwing up their names. How do you say their name? Watanabe. Has the Watanabe brothers and Nick Fazekas, who's 86 years old, and an NBA draft prospect, Kizel Tamanaga, who plays for Nebraska, and he is a really fun player to watch. He's a little explosive scorer, really good ball handler, really good shot creator. All right. I didn't mean to review that region, but I just thought it was interesting because, like a lot of these regions, like 2 teams you can automatically eliminate. But this region has a lot of interesting teams. So we'll start with you, Cam. Who do you like in this region?
Yeah, Rich, this is going to be an absolute rock fight of a region. If Australia hadn't lost Jock Landale sort of last minute, I would have liked them to be the pretty clear favorites to come out. But I really worry about their front court depth. I mean, traditionally, Australia is an excellent defensive team, and that's absolutely the case with this team as well. I mean, you can go down the list. Like, these are all NBA type defenders. Even Joe Ingles, like, granted, he's lost a step, especially after his ACL injury. But
Joe Ingles lost a step before he ever had a step.
He never had a step, yeah. But now he's got like a half step. But still, still a great player, great playmaker. Their playmaking is all around solid. Their shooting has been pretty solid as well. But defensively, this team is freakish. I mean, Josh Green, Dyson Daniels, Matisse Thybulle, Ingles, Dante Exum, even Xavier Cooks can defend at a pretty solid level. Jack White, throw him in there. They really struggle to score the ball, though. And I think that's going to be a major issue for them versus, a team like Germany, right? You got Dennis Schroeder, Franz Wagner, Daniel Tice. They can all shoot the ball. They've got international size. And they've got
Mo Wagner's game is perfect for Europe.
It is too, yeah. And even go down to Finland. I mean, they've got Markkanen. He's an absolute stud for this team, and they've got the size to compete. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Olivia Combo. Yeah, I mean, I watched him play at Tennessee. Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
I was going to say Jacob Granderson as a shooting guard. I mean, he goes like 6'5", 6'6", So
yeah.
And Little, I'm not sure what's he about 6'3". He's not
6'3",
6'4".
6'4". 6'4".
So yeah, they're going to have a big lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that Rui Hachimura has opted to not play for the Japanese team.
Yeah, I forgot to add him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he would make it even more competitive. I think you got to go kind of backwards with this group. I think Japan will probably not quite have enough, especially size-wise, to compete with these other teams. But man, between Finland, Germany, and Australia, it's gonna be tough. I kind of like Germany to come out one. I think they just have the size and they have the scoring. And then Australia, I think, is going to come out second. But Finland I think they have enough to really make it a tough run.
Right.
But you could get a crazy couple of weeks from Lauri Markkanen, and he could just put away a couple of these teams.
Yep.
You never know.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Luka dominate, pretty much single-handedly go really far in these types of settings. So yeah, a player like Markkanen could do something similar. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Cam on this one. I think Germany's the one here. I know for USA fans, if you watch, they gave the United States a pretty good scare. It took a great block from Jaren Jackson. It took basically the reigning defensive player of the year to make a defensive player of the year type play, and then Anthony Edwards to rise up and knock down a big three to be able to put that game away. I think Germany's we did mention this earlier, they might be a little bit on the top-heavy side. They're not the deepest team, but they probably can put out close to their top 5-6 is really, really nice. And I think all these guys, they have size, they have shooting ability. I've been a big Franz Wagner brother fan. Like, he's really pop. We don't talk about him enough because he's in Orlando, but that dude can play and is really establishing himself as one of the top players, the top young guys, I feel like, that we don't really talk about. Lauri Markkanen is probably the best player in this group, I would say, top to bottom. And when you have the best player, again, like we said, he might just decide to average 33 a game and shoot damn near 53% from the field for a 2-3 game stretch and get this team to advance. But I'm gonna go Germany at the one, and maybe some recency bias because I've seen them play now twice, and I've seen the players on that team play a lot of them since their college days through their NBA career, so I'm a little bit more familiar. And then Australia, while I do agree scoring is an issue, they do have depth, which is something a lot of these other teams can't really claim. I mean, I've watched Jock Landale for years, being a St. Mary's being right across the bay for me. So him not being there hurts, but they have enough in terms of defensive switchability, enough guys who can play make, enough guys who have played with each other. And at the end of the day, guys like Josh Giddey and Dyson Daniels aren't really scorers, but I think at this level, on a deep team with their athletic ability and just their feel for the game, NBA experience they've gathered, I think they'll be able to put together enough scoring to obviously be a threat that Australia has kind of become known as. So I'll go Germany 1, Australia 2, but do not be surprised if Lauri Markkanen decides to put Finland on his back and they sneak in and maybe knock a Germany or Australia off that top seed.
I, for the last 24 hours, have gone back and forth. Depending on what time during those 24 hours you caught me, I would have said Australia or I would have said Germany. But I think what put the nail in the coffin to me was Germany today playing the U.S. so tight. Yep. So I'm going to go with Germany. By the way, we have yet to disagree on our group winners.
I was hoping Cam was going to say Australia because I was pretty locked in Germany, but Cam knows what he's talking about. So
now I think the Landale injury is a killer. Yes. It's a killer for Australia's championship hopes. I still think, they could, go as far as say the bronze medal. But yeah, they really Reap, Reith and Jack White are basically, their most established bigs. This team has a lot of guards and wings, but not many of them can shoot. Patty Mills is probably the best shooter on that team, but then you're giving it up on the defensive end. So I'm wondering if, now one thing I could see this team doing is just running, because they have one of the best playmakers in the tournament in Giddey, and all these guys are athletic, or most of them are athletic. And so if they can get up and down the court on you, that's probably the best way for them to create offense with their defense, get down the court. But in half court settings, I think they're going to struggle.
Yeah. I mean, a Giddey, Daniels, Josh Green, Thibault type of lineup that's just running and gunning on you, and they're all like 6'6" plus. They all can defend pretty well, especially guys like Thibault, Daniels, could be interesting, but I think they're going to run into a really big problem when they play those teams like a USA that's going to be able to put up points if they want and have 5 guys on the court that can generally create their own offense. That's where Australia is going to run into that brick wall.
Yeah. I think Australia probably has the biggest variance out of any team.
Yeah.
They could very easily podium, but they could also very easily, drop one to Finland on the back of a Lauri Markkanen 40 piece.
And then lose to Germany too.
Yep. Right. And then fall out.
Yeah.
Yep. And fall out of group play. And yeah, like Drew was saying, that's how they've been playing since Jock Landale went down. Right. They've been playing heavy minutes of basically Josh Giddey running point with Josh Green, Dyson Daniels, Matisse Thibault, and maybe Patty Mills, but they would swap him out for Exum for defense as well.
Yeah.
Just like a wall of arms coming at you defensively. That's their system this year.
That move really fast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ingles is probably going to have to play some at the 4, he kind of likes to be a point forward, but I think they're going to need him as more of a traditional 4. And he only goes about 6'7". So, all right. So we'll move on to Group F. And this is where I call foul. This is where I call conspiracy. This is where I call they did everything they could to make sure Luka didn't get knocked out of the tournament, at least until the Sweet 16. Because, I don't know who greased whose palms. Probably, TV probably greased somebody's palms. They said, let's put Luka in a region that he can't lose in. And the reason why it's a concern is because Slovenia, from my point of view, I mean, you got Mike Tobey, solid European player, Ziggy Smart, nice, up-and-coming young player, guard, and Gregor Glass, who was just in this last draft class. He's a shooter, but he's also, only 22 years old. And that's, and then the rest of this roster is the other teams in the region, Georgia, not a bad team, okay? They have some talent, such as Sandro Mamu Kalishvili and Goga Batatse and Tornik Shengilia, who had a cup of coffee in the NBA. Then you have the other 2 teams. You have Cape Verde, who has EuroLeague star Walter Tavares and 11 other guys who go between 5'6" and 5'10", I think. Walter Tavares is a really good European center, and of course he played in the NBA for quite a number of years. Then you have Venezuela, even gets worse. If you have to find the best Venezuela player, best I could come up with was Michael Carrera, and he's not even that good. So I'm sorry, Venezuela. I don't know how you knocked. Argentina two teams that aren't in this tournament, that actually three, that I'm surprised. Senegal, Argentina, Croatia. They all could line up teams that could give, could win, could be in the championship. Well, Senegal, they have the talent. They just don't seem to have the coaching and so forth. But yeah, I don't know how Venezuela got in here over Argentina, but they did. So, Drew, what are your thoughts on this region, the Luka region?
Yeah, Luka's going to average a 30-point triple-double, and they'll be advancing. Maybe not a 30-point, but it's pretty, look, Slovenia is going to win this one, barring something happening to Luka, and even then, I still think they're the best team overall. So I think it's Slovenia, and then I'm going to just give the nod to Georgia just because they have NBA caliber talent on their team. Like known NBA caliber talent that have been in the league, have stuck around, even if it's a small bit role players, they've been in the league versus two teams that you got to, dig to find one name to put on a list. So I think it's pretty obvious that the 1-2 should be Slovenia at the 1, Georgia at the 2. That's all I got to say about that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a complete disaster for Slovenia not to come out of this group, number one. I am still worried about their deeper, their hopes of going deeper in this tournament, especially losing Chanchar during a friendly game. And Drew, you joke about Luka averaging a 30-point triple-double, but that's just about what he's done in friendly play so far. Yeah. And just kind of strolling out in sweats. I do have to shine some light on Sandro Mamukilishvili because I love that guy coming out of Seton Hall. He's currently with the Spurs. I think that he's one of Pop's favorites. It seems to be that way.
Signed to a standard contract, so he doesn't have to worry about that.
Yep. I think he's going to have a really, really good tournament, and I would not be shocked to see him playing some pretty major minutes for San Antonio next year. I really like his game. For those who maybe haven't seen him in a while or, haven't seen him play since Seton Hall, he's a 6'10" plus wing, essentially. He's left-handed, can really shoot the ball, and he can handle. Like he can actually
and he can play the 5 if he has to. He can play the 5 if he has to. So
similar, I would compare him actually to Markkanen, in that sort of he's his best skills are not necessarily befitting of a role player, but he has to prove that he can take a next step to sort of break out of sort of like the depths of a rotation in the NBA. But I think he's capable. I think this might be the tournament to kind of put him over the top. And we'll see him in the NBA more often.
Right. All right. So we all agree again. And here's the thing. This is why I laugh at this region. Even if Slovenia would lose to Georgia, they're still going to move on. They're not losing to Cape Verde. They're not losing to Venezuela. And so they're going to move on. They're guaranteed to move on, whether they win the region or not. So Luka gets into the Sweet 16. Georgia probably walks into the Sweet 16 as well. So there we go. All right. Region G gets tougher here. And it's led by Spain with Sante Adama from Memphis, with the Hernan Gomez brothers, Usman Garuba, Alex O'Brien, who played with Oklahoma City, Victor Claver, who played in the NBA. They have a couple of nice young players, Joel Para being one of them. It was just in this past draft, didn't get drafted, but he's a nice power forward who can shoot some. He's a player to keep an eye on. I think it's Pereira. And I would keep an eye on him. He might be a guy that you might see coming over the U.S. eventually. They also have Juan Nunez, who's in our draft board. He's probably going to be, again, I'm going to say I have him just outside the first round right now, but this is definitely a place for him to shine without Ricky Rubio. He's a point guard, and without Ricky Rubio. And by the way, we found out during our research of the show that Sergio Llull is a longtime national team member, longtime Spanish League, EuroLeague player. The New York Knicks own his draft rights still. He is 36 years old. And so, Sergio, the Knicks are waiting for you. The region also features Brazil with a lot of the normal names on the Brazilian team, including Raul Neto and Gui Santos, whose draft rights are owned by the Warriors, and Bruno. How do you say Bruno's name again?
Caboclo.
And Bruno Caboclo, who I believe was a lottery pick back in the day. He seems to have turned his career around and is playing really nice in European ball, very productive in European ball. Also, Didi Luzada, and some other players, that are notable on that team. Then we have the Ivory Coast. I had trouble finding a good player on that team, and Iran, I had even more trouble finding a good player on that team. So to me, it comes down to Spain and Brazil. And I think Brazil could be a formidable opponent. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, this Brazilian team is kind of interesting. Like, I've watched a lot of Gui Santos just because obviously my Warriors, he's played summer league for my team. They drafted him. I think this is a pretty impressive team. I mean, I know Bruno was playing in Germany, I believe, and played pretty well there last I checked. And I think the other Santos was also in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. Iago Santos, I think he was in Germany.
Yes, the little point guard. Yes, and he's been playing very well. He's been playing very well. He was on our draft board a couple years ago.
Yeah, so I think that they have a good mixture of some of these young guys coming in. Obviously guys like Raul Neto and Cristiano Felicio that we're used to have kind of been on the team for a while. So I think they could be a pretty exciting mix of like young guys ready to prove something that have kind of started to build their own careers, either trying to break into the NBA or overseas. I'm still probably going to lean Spain. Just they've been kind of that perennial top 3 team in the world. There's a nice combination of NBA talent, veteran FIBA talent. But I think this is a 2-horse race. I'm going to give the nod to Spain, but I think Brazil could catch them. I really think Brazil has enough as the right mixture of young guys and kind of veteran guys. And if those young guys pop and kind of play the way that they've been playing overseas on their own and bring that to this team, I think they could catch Spain, because I don't think the Spanish team is nearly as formidable in terms of the main brands.
There's no Rubio. There's no Gasol.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll give them the nod based on kind of pedigree, and you look at their roster, and I still think they're probably the better team. But I don't think the gap is that wide. I think Brazil could catch them. I like this Brazil team. I haven't seen either team. I take that back. I saw Spain play a little bit. They looked like a really solid Spanish national team. I haven't seen Brazil play, but I've seen a couple of these guys individually. And if they come together and play like that, they're going to be pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're I'd say they're one of the better second-rung teams.
Yeah.
Cam, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is another, sort of bribe-heavy group, I would say.
Yeah, someone bribe them to. You're talking about the bottom 2.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the Spain national team is a stalwart in terms of international play. But this Spain team just does not have it to me. I'm shocked that Marc Gasol didn't come out of retirement just to carry this squad. Which actually I saw a news break that he was considering coming out of retirement to play another year in Spain, which is kind of wild.
Maybe he wants to play with Ricky. With Ricky.
Yeah, maybe he's gearing up for the Olympics. But yeah, I think this team is almost dependent upon Juan Núñez. I mean, their guard lineup is Sergio Llull, 36, and
only played 16 minutes per game last year.
Yeah. And I mean, you've got the lesser of the Fernandezes.
Right.
Victor Claver.
Yeah, Rudy Hernandez is on this team. You can stick a fork at him. And Jamie's not really, or Jaime is not really a point guard,
No. So they're almost completely dependent upon Núñez for point guard production.
Who is 19 years old?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's 19. He just turned 19 June 4th.
Yep. I mean, I would not be shocked if Brazil upsets them in group play. I think that it would take the wrath of God for Ivory Coast or Iran to beat Spain, but I'm not going to chalk up this Spain team as a shoe-in to make it out of group play either. I like the Brazil team. Another guy that had an NBA stint that I really appreciate is Cristiano Felicio.
Right.
Really solid big.
Played with the
He
Bulls.
can shoot a little bit. Yep. Had a good stint with the Bulls. I think Caboclo can give you enough production offensively, and he's a solid defender. And I think Guy Santos, like on in international play, I think he's going to he's going to shine.
I called him the Brazilian Luka when his draft year.
They're really similar. They have similar body types, similar play styles. I wouldn't be shocked to see Brazil come out as like the one seed from
Yago is a great scorer, playmaker, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So I might take Brazil 1 out of this group and Spain 2.
We're gonna finally have a difference. We finally have a difference. Woohoo! Party. All right. So I think Rubio's injury is tough because it puts a lot of pressure on what's left of the point guards and Lull and Nunez. And so I think that's a killer. But not a killer so much that they don't think they're going to win this region. I think Brazil and Spain both walk into the Sweet 16. Yeah. So now we move on to Group H, and I'm going to label this the Group of Death because it looks like the damn Group of Death because you have Canada, who's loaded. You have France, who's loaded. You have Latvia, who would probably be the second best team in a lot of other regions, or at least, you know, be right there. I mean, I think Latvia and Finland are probably the two best, third best teams in their region. Yeah. And you have Lebanon, who has Amari Spellman, who apparently Amari loves Lebanese food. And so I think we can count Lebanon out, but, you know, Latvia is your third best team, and then France and Canada fighting for first. Yeah, I think this is the toughest region there is. What do you think, Drew?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the Canada-France matchup, these teams are going to be pretty damn tough. I think both of these teams have like legit podium potential. I know we talked about Jamal Murray not playing for Canada, which sucks because a Shea Jamal Murray backcourt would be absolutely disgusting and would score there'd be no team that could contain just those two. One of the things I like about this Canada team, and I'm going to take them to win this region or this group, I think I like is that when we talk about some of these teams, we've always internationally, at least when you look at their NBA talent, sometimes countries either lean towards the bigs or the guards. Like they don't have a complete NBA kind of rotational piece or player at every position, and this team does. I mean, you can make an argument that at the end of this, Shea might be the best player in this tournament. He was a first-team All-NBA guy. I mean, the way that he played last year, would anyone be shocked if, you know, Luka's Luka, but if Shea just goes on a monster run and for this small segment of basketball is playing like one of the best players in the world, I wouldn't. He's got guys like RJ Barrett, Kelly Olynyk, I mean, Dylan Brooks, whatever's going on in, but it's still an NBA caliber player. I really like Lou Dort, just the physicality of the defense. Shea's cousin, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dwight Powell, you know, Zach Edey, who I've been kind of out on in the past, but again, is still a legit 7-foot+ body. I think this team is really, really deep. And then France is another one of those kind of long-term mainstays. I know Batum and Fournier are getting a little bit up there, but I still think at this level, a guy like Evan Fournier, you know, Cam nail on the head, turns into a completely different type of player and is going to probably be pushing 20+ points per game pretty easily. Gobert, while he's a flawed NBA player, I think his style fits kind of the international rules. He's still a force. I mean, he's still a multiple-time defensive player of the year. Batum is over the hill, but I think it's just at this point in his career, that crafty veteran who is familiar with how this team likes to play, can do a little bit of everything. They've got other nice pieces down this roster. I think they're going to go 1-2. But, you know, Latvia kind of got screwed here. Like Latvia, they were inside, say, the Slovenian group. They probably feel pretty comfortable advancing.
Yeah,
maybe
or,
you know,
yeah, or at least they would give Georgia,
Yeah.
definitely give Georgia a run for their money. I'd say that.
yeah. If they're in that Lithuania Montenegro group, they might be able to catch one of those teams sleeping and make a run. So they kind of got screwed here. I mean, they're very clearly the third best team, but that's not necessarily an indictment on them. Lebanon is no chance. France and Canada are going to just mollywop them. So I think this is going to be a two-horse race. But Canada looks like an NBA roster. You know, like Canada literally looks like an NBA roster that goes like 8, 9 deep. And I'm not even talking about guys that are lesser known. I'm just talking about the NBA guys. They have some lesser known guys on that team. I mean, you guys did a good job putting together, you know, Kyle Alexander, Kevin Pangos is a name people might be familiar with that he can play at the point. So like, this is a really solid team. I got Canada winning this one, and I think Canada makes a podium run pretty confidently.
Let me ask you both this before Cam gives us his picks. Is this Canadian team better than the Washington Wizards?
Oh,
seriously?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yes. Yeah.
You're telling me Shea is my best player? Yeah.
Yeah. Shea is better than Kuzma or Poole. Barrett hasn't really figured it all the way out, but he definitely is an NBA player. Lou Dort is, I think, one of the more underrated guys in the league, just in terms of his 3-and-D and physicality value. And then all these other guys. I mean, Dwight Powell is a starter on the Dallas Mavericks. Kelly Olynyk has been in the league for 7-8 years. So, yeah, they're better than the Washington Wizards. Wow. Wow.
Right.
There's a couple teams on here I would say are better than the Wizards, though.
Yeah, that's fair.
Serbia certainly would be up there with Jokic.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Cam. What are your picks?
God, it's hard. It's really hard to pick a one between Canada and France. I think they're both going to make it out. If Latvia did have a healthy Porzingis, maybe then you could see some sort of upset situation, but I just don't think that's going to happen. This guy comes down to what you value. Like if you want a team that is proven on international play, proven in Euro play, France is pretty clearly the one here. I mean, a team that has played together too, right? Gobert, Batum, Fournier, DeColo, even Akobo, they've played together for a long time. Mustafa Fall has looked really solid.
Yeah, Mustafa Fall he's huge and rebounds, block shots.
Yeah, he's a good passer too. They've been playing. They've been running through him as like their poor man's Jokic when Gobert goes to the bench. I think they play so well together. And like I was saying earlier, Gobert is like he's molded for international play. You don't have the illegal defense rules. You don't have a defensive 3 seconds. When he can just sit at the rim and play college-style defense, he is a crazy good asset. That being said, though, in like a tournament that has such, I would say, like weak guard play, to have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, RJ Barrett, Dylan Brooks, Lou Dort, Alexander Walker, and then throw in a little bit of size with Olynyk and Edey and a Tennessee guy and Kyle Alexander, who I really appreciate a lot. I got to go Canada 1, France 2, but that they're going to see each other again after group play, and who knows what happens.
Right. I agree with you. It's going to be fun to watch those two teams square off. It's experience versus, athleticism and youth. And but I lean toward Canada. But I'm a little worried that France is kind of thin at the guard spot. Eli Okobo is, more of a scorer than a distributor, though he's improved that this year. DeColo is DeColo, but DeColo is 36 now. Still as efficient as ever, but his minutes have been dwindling. It's going to be tough, but I lean toward Canada. So let's do something fun. And what I'm going to do is, you guys, I'll pick last. So I'll just pick third. But what we'll do is we'll do a serpentine draft pick, okay? And we'll each take 2 teams. So that would be a total of 6 teams. And whichever one of our 2, we each have 2 teams, and it can't be the U.S. That's the only rule. The U.S. is out. So whichever team finishes the highest of our 2, that's the winner. And the winner will get either his choice of a Hoops Prospects coffee mug or a Hoops Prospects t-shirt. And I win. If I win, I don't have to pay for the Hoops Prospects t-shirt or coffee mug. So that's a winning. That's winning by kind of, addition by subtraction. So you guys rock, paper, scissors for it. Cam just pointed out to me that this is not how they traditionally have done it, correct?
No, I think this is a new system for this year.
Right. So explain the new system.
Yeah, so previously they would go straight into elimination play. But this year they're actually going to move on to a second round of group play. So the top 2 teams from each of our previous groups who we just went through will then play in sort of super group play. The top 2 teams from those groups will then go to elimination tournament style. So the way it'll match up is the 2
based on our picks.
Yeah, the way it's going to turn out based on our picks for, we'll call it super group play. You'll have Dominican Republic, Italy, Serbia, and Puerto Rico playing in a group.
Keep in mind, we all disagreed on the second place team in Group B. I took China, Drew took Puerto Rico, Cam took South Sudan. I changed my pick to Puerto Rico so that we could move on.
Yeah. Yeah. So an at-large team might very well take that second spot from Group B. Then in our second super group, which I think this is pretty clearly the weakest group, we've got Team USA, who will immediately dominate Greece, Lithuania, and Montenegro. Granted, you're going to have some bigs that might pose a problem for Team USA, but I think they've pretty clearly got the talent and depth. Then in our next super group, we've got Germany, Australia, Slovenia, and Georgia. And in our last super group, which this is an absolutely brutal pairing, we've got Spain, Brazil, Canada, and France.
Wow.
So only 2 of those teams will be able to advance for a chance to podium.
Wow. So the group of death becomes a super group of death.
It does.
All right. So did you guys rock, paper, scissors yet? Because what I'll do is I'll pick third. We'll do it serpentine draft. So whoever wins rock, paper, scissors gets pick 1 and pick 6. I will get pick 3 and 4, and the other person will get pick 2 and 5.
Sounds good.
All right. You can't pick Team USA. That's the one team you can't pick. And so whichever of us has the team that finishes higher, hopefully as the runner-up, or we don't know what we're talking about. Yeah. So does that mean, by the way, that once they get down to 8, it's going to be kind of like a seeding thing, right? So it won't matter what group they're in. So once you get to that final 8,
I think their total record gets tallied at that point.
Points differential and
point differential. I think is the last limb. Yeah, they're head-to-heads, so the teams that they beat in each group.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Rock, paper, scissors, gentlemen.
So on 3, we're going to go.
2, 3.
Ooh.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, wait. That's where I showed myself. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
I didn't even go. So are we going on Rich's 3? Are we going on Rich's 3? Okay, we're going on Rich's 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Ah, okay. Ooh. Cam got me.
Okay. All right. So Cam, you got the first pick.
Give me Canada.
That's what I was thinking I would do.
Give me Canada.
All right.
We didn't even mention we got Zach Edey. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
we got the size.
Drew mentioned him.
I did. I'm not a needy guy, but that's a big dude, and can't forget about him.
Yeah, I mean, we've already said that this Team Canada is better than the Wizards and probably a few other NBA teams. So, all right. So, Drew, you got pick 2.
I will take from our super group of death. I will take France.
All righty. Wow.
So if we were doing by group play, that means Spain and Brazil would be eliminated.
Right. I am going to go with Serbia as my first pick.
That's how I was going back and forth on Serbia and France.
And now you're gonna have to give me a chance to think. I think it's gonna come down to. I'm gonna go with Germany.
Oh, Rich, break my heart.
All right, Drew, you got the next pick.
But we know we've eliminated Spain. It was Spain and Brazil, right, Cam? Those would be the two that would have been bumped.
Yep,
okay.
they're done. Cooked.
I know there's.
I mean, if your scenario works out, yes.
Yeah. From
But
a variables,
you can still pick Spain, but they're just
Yeah. They might. Yeah. They won't podium, but they're next.
I'm gonna go with Australia. I know they're a variable, but I still think Australia's got enough in the tank to be my number 2 team in this draft.
So no one's going with Luka, and I think I would have made the same pick. True. All right, Cam, get the last pick.
Oof. It's tough between Dominican Republic and Slovenia.
I was bouncing on Dominican Republic too, Cam. They were kind of there.
I just off of Karl Anthony Towns not ever getting it done in the playoffs, I'm gonna go with Slovenia.
I mean,
see, now I think I would have went with Spain, kind of as assurance if Canada doesn't come through.
Nah, I think they're just better.
Okay. All right. Well, we got our picks, folks. So now the question is, does anyone of any of these teams, Cam, are there any teams that we think can actually beat Team USA? Cam, I'll start with you.
I think if they get enough out of the front court, in terms of like Jaren Jackson is playing that all NBA defense, they were getting enough rebounding. I don't think there's a team that can beat them. I think if Jamal Murray was playing, I think Canada could beat them. I just think yeah. What do you think, though, Drew?
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Cam. Sorry.
No, you're good.
You're right. I mean, I think if Jamal Murray plays, I think that they could pretty confidently actually look Team USA in the eye and feel pretty confident. I think Canada can still get them. I think they have enough size. I think there's a real possibility in a matchup that Shea is the best player on the court if they were to match up, like in that one game setting. I think that Canada has a shot. And I mean, it sucks. I think Serbia would have had a shot because I think if Jokic was there, even if just Jokic was there, I know Misic. How is it? Is Misic?
I think it's Micic.
He also hurts, but I think they're a big team. We talked about early on how we think they're oversized in a good way, and that they go 6'5 plus, 6'6 plus pretty much down the lineup in terms of their key players. I think Serbia is another one where if they had their NBA star, if Jokic was there, I think Serbia could get him too, because there's no way Jaren Jackson can handle Jokic. But I think USA wins this one, and I do think Canada can give them a very solid run. But we've seen the USA do it before, where at some points they can just say, you know what, screw it. Here's 5 NBA All-Stars. You have 1. Good luck. And that works, especially in a game like basketball, where sometimes you can get away with at times being able to just quote unquote roll the ball on the court at times.
Right. I think the way you're going to get Team USA is in the round of 8. I don't think you're not going to you're going to have to get them in the round of 8, 1 game scenario. And I think in that situation, Canada could do it, France can do it, and Serbia could do it in that scenario. And interestingly enough, they were the picks that we made 1, 2, and 3 in our little contest. I think Australia would have been right there too if they had Jacques Landale. Spain would be right there if they had Ricky Rubio. These are really killer injuries. In Serbia, their lack of a point, a proven point guard, without Misic, that hurts them, but not as much as Jokic. But even with that, they still have so much talent. So, there we go. All right. It was fun, gentlemen. That was a great idea, Cameron. Appreciate all the input you did with the research and so forth. All right, gentlemen. So that wraps up our episode for the week, for at least our NBA portion. We'll be back in a couple of days, and we're going to have our continue our college conference previews. But until then, I just want to say thanks to all our listeners. And if you ever miss an episode and you want to get caught up, you can do so at hoopsprospects.com. Like I said, we'll be back in a few days. Jake and I will be doing some college previewing. Maybe even Cam will join us. I don't know if Cam's up for that or not. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Oh man, I'm excited to watch some international ball.
Yes, and how do you watch the World Cup? Is it?
I just watch it afterwards on YouTube. Appreciate it, YouTube.
That's the easiest way to do it. I know that I know that there's a couple sites that have been playing games, but it's generally only Team USA games. That's the only thing,
right?
That you can, if you want to catch,
Fox has been covering some of the friendlies.
Yeah.
We'll have to look into that because I definitely want to watch basketball. I'm hungry for basketball. They're doing some other kind of sport this time of year. They wear funny headgear and they call it football. They're just
rolling balls.
They call it football, but they never use their feet. So yeah. All right. So thanks for joining us again, gentlemen. Good work. Good job. And I will talk to you soon.
That's always done.